Hey everyone! Welcome to another Stonehearth Desktop Tuesday. Last week, we showed you how designer Richard is investigating large, open-ended, potentially game-changing questions in Stonehearth by making fast prototypes to test specific gameplay questions. Before we start this week, let me be super clear. Prototype means fast, janky, throwaway code and gameplay crafted to answer a specific question. Please understand that everything you see here today, including art and gameplay, is placeholder meant to give us a broad overview of the problem and potential solutions. If we really like a placeholder system, then we'll create a more nuanced and sophisticated version of it for the final game. So last week when we left off, Richard, Engineer Max, and Engineer Angelo were examining the role of exploration in the community building genre. Specifically, their questions were, question number 1, what would a community building game be like if exploration were part of its core loop? And question number 2, if exploration is part of the game's core loop, and since cities don't move around in space the way protagonists in exploration-based RPGs like Skyrim do, how can we make sure that there's always something new to explore? After the first prototype, we discovered that though the act of exploring was exciting, it's always interesting to reveal something new, that placing loot around the map that was replaced by new loot created artificial pressure on the player to grab everything before it disappeared. This in turn caused players to find their towns and Hearthling communities a distraction rather than the focal point of the game. To balance this out, Richard and Max's second prototype starts players on a relatively small forest biome and tasks them to collect town upgrades and a MacGuffin, a placeholder quest item, from elsewhere around the map. To preserve the feeling of suspense, these items were still guarded by monsters, though less intense ones, and instead of creating variability in the terrain by introducing new items every 6 days, the MacGuffins could be used to summon a neighboring biome, which in turn would offer different treasure. The treasure, when harvested, would again unlock a new biome, and on and on. To account for the fact that these biomes were super big, and that it's exhausting to have your footmen comb the entire landmass for loot, Max created a rudimentary placeholder watchtower system. With enough materials, players can make giant fortresses that will, over time, reveal all the monsters and treasures around them. At this point, I'd like to give a special shout out to Bruno Supremo, who created the amazing canyon biome, which we appropriated for this high-speed prototype. Look at the drama in these cliffs and these picturesque arches. Just seeing it was such an incredible motivator to want to move in. Also, shout out to Repeat Pan and Froggy, who created the winter biome as part of Frostfeast, and finally Vargbane, who made a beautiful Anorian biome with fall-colored trees. We had a great time stitching these biomes together, though the abrupt lines of demarcation between them is something I'm positive Artist Alley will figure out how to smooth over if we ever implement anything like this in our actual game. This prototype went immediately better than the first one. People didn't feel nearly so urgent about collecting all the treasure around the map, and so were able to focus on their towns between expeditions with their footmen. Footmen could rest in town between trips. The watchtowers allowed people to slowly expand their foothold into the fog of war, and the different biomes were a pleasure to explore. Speaking for myself, discovering metals in the rocky wall of the canyon biome made me immediately want to create a mining outpost there. Still, this prototype too revealed a number of issues. First of all, given our focus on small communities, is it appropriate for Stonehearth to encourage players to make chains of outposts, each one only inhabited by a few Hearthlings? Does that really further our goal of making a community builder? Furthermore, we believe that people care most about the monuments and landmarks closest to their cities. If people went into other biomes to collect resources, would they ever attach to those biomes, or come to see them as merely land to be strip-mined? And what happens when you exhaust all the biomes near your town and have to go even further out to find new places to explore? Will all your time be spent navigating from one space to another? This last issue, the vast spaces involved in the prototype, also brought up a technical hurdle. As I'm sure any of you who've created a mine far from your banner knows, Hearthlings are awful at traversing long distances. Footmen would get halfway to a target before going home to sleep or eat. Combat or conversation can easily distract Hearthlings transporting crates and supplies. People do not always choose to eat near their beds. These problems, which Richard had already encountered in his mainline designs for happiness traits, conversations, and now crafting, were so acute that we paused development on further iterations of this prototype so that Richard, Max, and Albert could get back into the AI and solve these issues for the game at large. More on this in some future Desktop Tuesday. And that's where we'll wrap up on exploration prototypes for now. In the long term, we're very excited as a team to see if, through prototypes, we can find a way to include more elements of exploration in our game. We'd love to hear what you think here in the comments or on our forum at discourse.stonehearth.net, although please remember that, again, everything you saw in this prototype, including the MacGuffins, the talismans, the watchtowers, the biomes themselves, the size of the biomes, all that stuff is placeholder, and if we like it, it's something that we would dramatically improve before putting into the final game. Also, before we go, a scheduling announcement. Due to a combination of work-related and personal travel, I will be in the office only intermittently through the month of October, meaning that Desktop Tuesday will be on pause through the month and return on Tuesday, November 7th. I'll miss you all, but while I'm traveling, the rest of the team will still be working super hard on Alpha 23. In addition to the forums, you can still find us every week on Twitch. A different member of our team streams every Thursday at 6 p.m. PST. See you there, and see you in November.